I find that people classify shakshuka as an egg dish rather than a tomato dish. This leads to the notion that shakshuka is nothing more than cooked eggs with some tomato sauce, but the truth is far deeper. You see, you wouldn't make a slow-cooked ragu, toss it onto some pasta, then neglect to mention the meat sauce, and the same is true of shakshuka. The tomato sauce is the dish itself, and only when you make a rich and spicy tomato sauce does the dish actually become shakshuka. The proof is that we have many different kinds of shakshuka dishes in the Middle East and North Africa, and loads of them don't even have eggs at all, making them entirely vegan. I'm Obi, and today I'll show you how we make real authentic shakshuka from fresh tomatoes, and we'll discuss a few different varieties you can find around the Middle East. Let's get started. Today's star of the show is going to be these delicious in-season plum tomatoes, and I emphasize in-season because tomatoes in Europe taste like trash most of the year. That's because tomatoes outside of their natural growing season just taste of nothing. They don't have the sweetness, acidity, nor depth of a real tomato. So either get your hands on some dark red vine-ripened tomatoes of any variety, or stick to using canned ones for this recipe, which are usually harvested at the perfect time. The first variety of shakshuka we're making is the original North African variety from Algeria and Tunisia. For this you'll take 3 of your best tomatoes, or about 300 to 400 grams, and chop them up into small cubes that are small enough to melt into the sauce. You'll also need a red pepper of some sort. If you can get your hands on some fresh paprikas, then use them, or cut a bell pepper into chunks the same size as the tomato. We'll add in some paprika later to amp up the pepper flavour. Lastly, you'll need a green chilli. This one is a Turkish savory pepper, which has a moderate amount of heat. Use whatever medium heat green chilli you can get your hands on, or just leave it out. I've got a pan on the stove, and I've added in a tablespoon of olive oil. Heat it up, then add in 1 medium onion, or about 100 grams, which you should cut to the same small dice. Sweat your onion on medium heat for 5 minutes until it turns translucent. For a meaty version of the shakshuka, you can add some lamb or merguez sausages to the onion and sear them briefly. When the onion softens and starts to brown, add in the chopped tomatoes and any liquid which came out of them. Now add in the red pepper and green chilli and mix it all together. The special ingredient for the shakshuka is harissa, which is a spicy chili paste made from a chili pepper similar to paprika. This brand is the real deal, and I'll leave a link for this in my description because all other harissas are nowhere near as good. If you don't want to buy harissa or you want a milder shakshuka, replace this with tomato paste. Speaking of which, add 1 teaspoon of harissa and 1.5 tablespoons of tomato paste to a quarter cup or 60 milliliters of water and stir them to liquidize the pastes. Add that mixture into the pan as well as 3 minced cloves of garlic. To season, we'll start with half a teaspoon of caraway, which gives the sauce a long-lasting warmth. Now add in half a teaspoon of cumin, 1 teaspoon of ground coriander, half a teaspoon of black pepper, and 1 teaspoon of sweet paprika. Lastly, add 1 teaspoon of salt, then mix everything into the sauce. Cook this for a few minutes further, then flatten the sauce and pour over enough water to barely cover it, which worked out to about half a cup. Turn the heat down to medium-low and let this simmer for 15 to 20 minutes. At this point, your sauce should have cooked down, and when you scrape the bottom of the pan, you should see it briefly before it gets covered in sauce again. Any thicker and you might want to add some water as the sauce evaporates further when we cook the eggs. To add them in, use a spoon to make 4 divots or wells in the tomato mixture where you'll place the eggs. Crack an egg into each well, then go back and use your spoon to spread that tomato sauce further, making the well slightly bigger. This prevents the egg whites from overflowing and gives the dish a nicer look. Once you've cracked all 4 eggs in there, you can place the pan into your oven with the broiler and oven turned on, but it's much easier to just cook this on the stove. Cover the pan with a lid and let this steam until the whites are almost cooked through and the residual heat will carry them over. This is the perfect classical shakshuka following the traditional recipe, and the only thing which can make this better is if you follow Selma's tip to get amazingly runny yolks. The sauce is rich, full of tomato and pepper flavour, and extremely warm tasting. Dig into it with some flatbreads or serve it alongside a crusty loaf. The second shakshuka we're making is cooked with fava beans, and this kind you'll find in Egypt as well as Tunisia. You'll make the same shakshuka base as before, but leave out the caraway to give it more of an Egyptian flavour profile. For the beans, you'll need a 400 gram can of cooked fava beans. The Egyptian way uses skin on fava beans, but I can only find the skinless ones, which are usually used in the Tunisian version. Add the beans to the pan at the same time as your spices, and for the Tunisian one they also add chunks of boiled potato. Cook the mixture for the same 20 minutes and it will thicken up like this. Now take your shakshuka and place it in a baking dish or ramekin. You can choose to leave this vegan without any eggs, but I chose to add one in, which are both typical ways of serving. Place your ramekin into your oven with the broiler or grill and the oven turned on. Cook this until the top has browned for the eggless version or until the egg is cooked. You can easily make one recipe of the shakshuka, then serve it with beans for a vegan friend and with eggs for yourself. The last kind of shakshuka we're making is the Yemeni version, There's a lot of controversy about which shakshuka is the original, but this is like a scrambled egg version of the first one. You'll start it off the same way with softened onion and tomato, then leave out the pepper, and you can optionally add the green chili. This is just a half batch, but add in 2 teaspoons of tomato paste and stir that in. To season, we'll add half a teaspoon of salt and half a teaspoon of Yemeni Shakshuka, which is a spice blend that I'll leave in the description box below. Add in a quarter cup or 60 milliliters of water and let the tomatoes cook on low heat for a few minutes until softened. Whisk together 2 eggs, then pour them into the pan and scramble it all together. This is definitely quite a different version of shakshuka, but it is still very delicious and is made from the same components. I hope I've convinced you that shakshuka is not in fact an egg dish and that it's way better than the stuff you usually see on brunch menus. You need to try the classic one to really understand shakshuka, but it's easy to customize and serve different ways. Now, let's taste this. Alright, let's start off with the classic Tunisian variety. That is crazy good. Alright, now for the Yemeni kind, which is scrambled. Ooh, that is nice. And lastly, we got the Egyptian variety, which is with the beans. Those shakshukas were amazing. The Tunisian recipe has a nice heat level which is well balanced in the warm spices. If you've never had shakshuka, then this one will blow your mind. The Egyptian one is more mild and it's packed out with the beans which really complement the sauce. The Yemeni one is a great combination of scrambled egg and shakshuka, and it has some nice earthy flavours. All that's left to say is you have to try them out. Thank you for watching, and a special thanks to our patrons for supporting the channel, and I'll see you all in the next video.